All right. Thank you very much. Warm welcome again. And thank you to our panelists for taking the time to join us. Maybe let me do a very quick introduction of our panelists. First, we have Mr. Simon Long. Simon is the Director for Technology Strategy and Transformation for CBRE Singapore. So I understand that he is essentially the consulting arm at CBRE, working with lots of large organizations like Google and Salesforce on various analytics, AI and data projects. Yeah. And then very glad that Dr. Eric Wong can take the time to join us. Eric is the Group Chief Data and Strategy Officer for National Healthcare Group. He's also a practicing doctor. Just now I was told that Dr. Wong was stitching up a patient and therefore might be 15 minutes late. What can we say to that, right? That nothing is much more important than stitching up the patient. So thanks very much for taking the time. And I think it's wonderful to be able to hear directly from Eric the complexities in managing data and analytics project in the healthcare domain. Yeah. And then we have Mr. Cumarran. I will not attempt to say your last name, right? He's the Chief Data and AI Officer for Microsoft Asia Singapore. And here, he has actually a lot of experience actually directly advising and working on analytics projects across Asia. And therefore, I think we are looking forward to hear from you about your views. And finally, we have Andy Tan. Andy is the Director for Data Analytics and AI, and also the Chief Data Officer for Synapxe. And Synapxe also works in the healthcare domain, and I understand he actually works very closely with Eric, as well as various other healthcare groups in analytics and AI projects and other digital projects in the healthcare space. All right, so now we have a great set of panelists. So today's theme is really on talking about how we can enhance the outcomes of digital transformation with analytics and AI. So today we hope to explore both in terms of strategies as well as the various challenges that companies actually face in trying to digitally transform using the various and the latest tools in AI and analytics, which I'm sure every organization is trying to tackle. Even in the business school, in NTU, where we have the various administrative units, we are also constantly trying to look for ways to digitally transform ourselves using AI and analytics. So I thought maybe we could start with Cumarran. Given your broad overview that you might have, could you share with us what are some ways that you've seen that organizations have effectively integrated analytics and AI into their digital transformation strategies? Maybe you could give us an overview about what you have seen so far. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for everyone who have come here. I know it's a huge investment in time. So let me just share, as Microsoft, we do have the privilege and front row seats to help a lot of our clients and customers basically transform their business. And transformation is not easy, right? Because I would argue that as a startup, you basically have, blank canvas. But a lot of the companies we work with are enterprises that have legacy businesses, legacy architectures, people that they need to train, shareholders they need to answer to when they actually invest a lot of money in transformation. And finally, the actual transformation needs to lead to business outcomes, which can happen 18 to 24 months from now, and not in the quarterly cycles like Wall Street or any shareholder wants, right? And the quarterly board meetings. So for data and AI transformation, and our lens that we always bring is extreme and ruthless prioritization and link to business value, right? So this is something that I guess since I've started doing this in 2015 or 2014, everyone has repeatedly said. But in the era of Gen AI specifically, in 2023, I felt like everyone was just experimenting with the technology, right? They were like, okay, POC, great. I can get 20 PDF documents. I can slap on some Gen AI model on top of it, do some vector embeddings and get some information out of it, right, easily. 2024, we feel, is the year that a lot of them are taking this seriously, and we're seeing massive shifts in conversations. We're seeing conversations shift from, hey, what can AI do for me, to versus, hey, how do I set up the foundations to be successful for me to integrate AI into my business process? And I think the premise of your question was like, how are customers integrating data and AI into business processes? I would say very little, right? I would say very little. Because right now, it's still very fragmented, right? I would say yes, so there are cases where you have insurers. I think we saw an announcement with FWD, so this is public information, where Microsoft worked with them on call centers, on avatar agents, on selling, right? But largely speaking, like the majority of them are still figuring it out, right? They're still figuring out, and they're still having many little areas of how they can integrate. So I think this year and the years to come, one thing I can say is that the CDOs and the persona that all of you have to play in your companies become incredibly important, right? So yeah, it's a great time to be in this space.
All right, thank you. And it seems that you share very similar views as Andy, whom I'm next going to invite to provide some advice as well, as in terms of what you have seen that probably works in terms of integrating AI and analytics into your organizations or the healthcare sector's digital transformation strategies.
So I'll be speaking on, broadly about how we are helping public healthcare, because we don't really spend a lot of time in Synapse trying to maximize all this, because most of the time is spent helping the public healthcare. But we have been focusing more time on getting ourselves more ready for new technologies and challenges. So I think some of the things are, but we look at ourselves as one of the customers to ourselves. So I think the most important part of having the strategy is that the business, AI, and the IT needs to come together and have a synergized view on doing things, right? So I give an example. So if you have a very good AI, but there's no business use case or no business trust it, then it's just going to be a showcase, right? If it runs very expensively, taking a lot of compute, it's not going to be viable. So even if there's value, it's not cost viable, right? So all three needs to come together to have a means to bend the way we do things, so that we can get the right actions or the best decisions for the work that is being done on the ground. I think a lot of time, I see a lot of data strategies or technology or transformation strategies, which I was also a part of. We kind of like to put a lot of bells and whistles, but we forgot that actually everything has to blend together. So I think taking that step at the start is the most important. If there's no business priority to focus on, then there's no reason to transform, right? So I think that's the part that a lot of people needs to take care of. The other part is on how can we make it safe for people to fail, right? I think a lot of time technologies brings a lot of promises, but none of those promises comes with any caveat, right? I think, especially in the world of Gen AI, everybody must talk about Gen AI nowadays, right? It kind of reset everything that we know about technology and AI, right? We've been doing AI in Synapse for about 7-8 years, and this is a chance that we actually take back and kind of launch it in a way that we learn based on our 8 years of experience, to try to bring the user at the center of this, user and business at the center of this. So what we have done is, I think we have worked with Microsoft to build an in-house LM platform, so that it's safe and more cost efficient, and we have actually made this available to about 35,000 users across public healthcare, right? And end of this month, Singapore will come in. If I'm not wrong, early next month, whole of NSG will come in. Then everybody can get to use this. Now, there's nothing special about this, right? If there's about 40,000 users, everybody create one prompt that's very valuable to them. I think we did our job, right? It doesn't have to be sexy. So I think, and it's safe, and it's very, very accessible to them. I think that's one of the things that we are doing, that kind of put it around the user rather than put it on the chart and then make it very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I see a few commonalities between what you shared and what Cumarran shared in terms of, like you said, to really integrate business AI as well as business processes. So, Andy, can you share with us some examples in what you did in your healthcare group for this to happen?
Yep. So I think maybe I share one of the projects we did using AI. That's the prediction of multiple readmissions in 12 months. So we recognize that there are a lot of patients in the healthcare system that comes back, have episodes within 12 months that kind of shows that there's the peaking point or the deterioration point of their health, right? And they use up a lot of services, they need a lot of help, right? Unfortunately, one of the problems that we have was that nobody from the hospital kind of know about this, or most of them, because some of the patients go to different hospitals. You know, they go through A&E, they may end up in another hospital. So the data was not linked together, so they may not know at the point in time. So we did a study with ministry and the hospitals to link up the data from all the hospitals to identify this group of patients, and we recognize that trend, and we kind of identify the services to design a prediction model for patients at risk of multiple readmissions in 12 months. It's a mouthful, right? The typical one is a 30-day readmission. It's like a warranty, you know, like come out from hospital, 30-day readmission, something is wrong. Sorry, Eric. But, you know, we want to look further because I think we really care about that patient's condition. And we actually work together with all the different clinicians, statisticians, scientists across public healthcare to develop a model which was good, but actually we did a lot of things like validation, blind tests, prospective validation to gain the trust from the user. And concurrently, what we did was we redesigned the processes together with the different hospitals and make some tough decisions. Example, if a patient, by the time the patient exits the hospital, we will have known everything about the patient's episode. That would be the best time to make the prediction, right? From a science or AI perspective, that's the best, right? And that's what I would prefer. But from a business standpoint, is that the patient has left already. So it's kind of useless to know that the patient is at risk. They have to go out and bring them back, right? So we kind of make some compromises to predict at the point they get admitted. May not have the best accuracy because we don't have all the information, but we want to be able to predict at a point in time so that immediately things and protocols can follow, right? So we also did things like based on precision recall, we did a cut-off because I think surprisingly our clinicians say, don't have to be so high accuracy, but I need the volume of users because we want to help this group of users because we have set up the manpower and services to take care of all this. So we're okay that it's not very accurate, but we want to have more patients to come in rather than you give me just a few. So that will maximize how they invest time and the productivity of the people on the patients. So these were things that we have to work through to ensure that it makes sense. Of course, I could always just put a model there, 30-day readmission model, you know, on the website. And every time a patient, end of the day, I'll predict all this. But it doesn't really help. But what we did was we integrated to the point that all the clinicians and nurses on the ground, they just follow. High risk, carry on. They trusted it, they know it. They don't need to know how it was predicted. They just need to know the information that helps them make the decision, and they just move forward. So it was a bit like Minority Report, but people are very comfortable with it. So it took about 1 year for us to launch this. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. I think that's a very good example of how you should be integrating the business processes and AI. Sorry. All right, so maybe I can also ask Eric to build upon the conversation, to share with us what are some of the challenges that you are facing on the ground, right, in terms of trying to implement the analytics and the AI for the digital transformation initiatives. And also, more importantly, maybe share with us how you overcome some of these challenges.
I can actually go and sum the challenges in one word: people. and how you overcome that, deal with the people. That would actually be my very short answer. But I don't think the audience want to actually go and hear forwards, right? So maybe I actually elaborate a bit. So just building on what Andy have actually mentioned. First of all, I think healthcare, where I come from, is quite a conservative and unique industry in the sense that we are actually, in fact, under a lot of regulations. And on top of that, the expectations of interactions from people would actually be personal. So that actually, in fact, set the backdrops of some of the things that we do that might be slightly different from other industries. So I just want to actually go and put that caveat out first. And the reason why I say it's actually people is that, for example, I mean, Andy, in fact, worked very closely with us on the models. When we actually go and sounds very nice, and it's actually, in fact, a very, very nice tool to have. But when we actually goes down to the ground and talk to the doctors and nurses, you know, can you take a look at these informations? One of the commonest response to us is, so what? You know, I know these patients have a risk of coming back, you know, in probably around 3 weeks' time or 3 months' time. But it's not going to change how I'm going to practice and care for my patients. And so therefore, I mean, the point is this, a lot of the AI or analytic projects, we manage to actually go and provide a lot of information to the users or to various group of peoples. But sometimes a lot of those informations may not be contextualized. For example, your CEO will be taking a look at a set of information that is actually in fact important for his planning. But our doctors and nurses on the ground will need another set of information for them to actually go and execute what they need to do. And a lot of times giving them information is not good enough. We recognize that, I mean, in order for us to actually go and really make good use of this information or this AI, you know, results and things like that, actually a lot of work need to be done at the implementation science as well as the value management. I will actually elaborate a bit on the implementation science. What a lot of our experience, in fact, we have been building AI models or even machine learning models even before the AI become a buzzword for more than 10 years. The ones that are actually in fact successful are really the ones, at least from a clinician perspective, are really the ones that manage to actually go and change how we actually go and practice and how we engage patients. So one good example, in fact, is actually, in fact, I think over here, all of you have actually, in fact, went through the COVID period. In the National Center of Infectious Disease, on a daily basis, during the peak of the COVID period time, we see over 1,000 patients. Each of them need a chest X-ray. We do not have enough radiologists to actually go and read them. So in fact, we actually go and work with A-Star. We develop an AI model to actually go and help us triage and to actually go and do a screening of the chest X-ray to identify the ones that are actually in fact at a higher risk and therefore, you know, have a higher probability of, you know, having a pneumonia or COVID in this case, versus the one that's actually most likely normal. It wasn't a very glamorous project, you know, and the results, I can tell you, wasn't presented in a very elaborated, you know, very nice dashboard. But the only reason, or one of the key reasons why the project works is because we put a box running the AI model in our radiologist reporting station, and we actually go and link that box to a monitor next to their screen where they see the X-rays. And when they actually go and view an X-ray on the screen, the result is actually immediately visible on the other screen, and therefore they can actually go and make immediate decisions. And that we actually realized that I've actually in fact expedited a normal X-ray reporting time from 5 minutes to less than 1 minute. So this is actually in fact some of the good examples we work. Some of the ones that we don't work are actually in fact the ones that we actually go and put it, for example, in our EMR over a system just for notifications. We expect people to click on it. We actually go and ask them, can you go and take a look and please? And that one, I can tell you, none of that works. So, I mean, this is actually, in fact, just some two extreme examples of how we actually go and do implementation science. And ultimately, it's actually, in fact, the value. So, like, I mean, the various speakers have actually mentioned earlier on, running a lot of these models and even designing a lot of these models takes massive, massive amount of compute as well as manpower. I think you all know data scientists are not cheap. and so, therefore, you need to actually go and really project on how you're actually going to deliver value. Need to actually go and do it in a very agile manner, but at the same time, make sure I mean, at least personally, from what I've actually learned, make sure you have actually, in fact, have a very, very good foundations of being able to do it. So if I should just actually go and sum up what I'm trying to say here, well, to me, digitalizations or transformations with analytic AI have to be underlined by a good value management, a good implementation science, but more importantly, actually, in fact, a good foundation in your data and a good foundation for implementation. So these are actually, in fact, the three take-home I have.
All right, very good. I guess you really bring home the point that at the end of the day, for the analytics and AI to be useful, we must be able to actually manage the people aspects and that should come probably right at the beginning rather than at the end, right? All right, Simon, I would also ask you to share a little bit about in working with all your clients in analytics and AI, what are some of the key challenges that they face, as well as how did they overcome some of these challenges?
How do we do this? And a lot of that is processes. And that's a really interesting point when we talk about digital transformation. Because I think about alchemists 1,000 years ago who were saying, we're going to take lead and mercury and convert it into gold using a powerful stone, right? And everybody went, that's kind of a crazy hypothesis. But then we come forward, and in 1941, that powerful stone turned out to be uranium, and it was possible to nuclear transmutate mercury into gold. So effectively, what changed? Well, it took us 900 years to figure out the process. I'm hoping it's not going to be 900 years with AI for us to figure out those processes. But when we look at the challenges that we are facing, a lot of them need processes around them to help enterprises scale. So, and Andy mentioned a great one, that return on investment. What is the process that we need to define as an organization to build an understandable, effective return on investment model? And that includes various things. I take CBRE as an example. We say, okay, great, we want to enable all of our staff. I'm going to turn on Copilot. Turn on Copilot for everybody, right? That's a $40 US per month charge. 100,000 employees. I've just turned on a 4 million a month burn rate on my Microsoft licensing. That is not to say, however, that I will not see at an organization, with our turnover, that level of efficiency gains. But how do I convince the CFO? How do I convince the CFO on that? And we need a process that helps mark out all of those steps to build effective cost models that are understandable. That's part one. Second challenge, and I think this touches on perfectly what Dr. Wong, you just mentioned, is around the people. And what is the process that we say, right now we've justified the cost and we've got the investment sorted. How is that going to go towards our process for hiring, for staff development, and for new skills, right? So I think AI is seen as a big disruptor, and we're upskilling a lot of people right now, and we're looking at new talent. And I would say actually the balance is more on new talent, and that creates a lot of fear in organizations. So again, when you're thinking about putting this in, there's all the all the excitement about what it's going to bring, but a lot of people are going to get very worried in your organization that they're going to lose jobs. So what is the process for ensuring that we have an adequate upskill program to retain talent, as well as bring on new talent, to ensure that drive is sustainable without disrupting the organization on something we didn't see, which is everybody getting worried, going and leaving and doing other jobs. And then the third part is making sure that the underlying technology is sustainable. It's a big challenge. Things are moving insanely quickly at the moment. I come back to Microsoft just yesterday. Copilot plus PC was announced. So that is now Windows PCs that have an NPU built into them to do on-device, on-laptop processing of data that you could disconnect that from the internet right now. That solves a lot of the security challenges that we're already planning for, and organizations are starting to make plans on. So again, what do we build in as a process to say, right, that's how we do it, that's how we build it, this is how we change it if we need to, this is how we're going to adapt going forward to keep pace with the technology, to get the best from it without losing too much of that investment. So those are what I'd say with the three key challenges around that. It's all around process.
All right, thank you. So just to delve a little bit deeper into this discussion that we had so far, I guess what I heard is really it's very important for us to be considering upfront, right? What is the value that this analytics project is going to bring? At the same time, what I've also heard is there's a need for us to really integrate with the business processes. That seems to put a lot of onus upfront in determining, which of these multiple AI projects is the one that is going to bring the value to the organization. So I would love to hear your thoughts about how do you go about that decision process? Anyone? Yeah.
I'll start. Yeah. It's never an easy decision. We have on average at least around 100 AI projects in the run on a yearly basis. Majority of them will fail. Majority of them will fail. And finding the capabilities for us and understanding how you actually go and provisions your resources to these areas have actually not been easy. Gratefully, I mean within NHG as an academic medical center, we work very, very closely with NTU Medical School. So we managed to actually go and push quite a lot of these AI projects into research, and we actually go and tap on some of the national research grants. But I think to me, there's actually always a two-tier approach to this. Number one, you want projects or ideas to actually be able to flourish, and you want to actually go and test it out. That to me is actually not so much aiming at the ultimate implementation. Like I said, at most, even by industrial standard, at most 20% of them will actually go into the full 9 yards. But it's actually, in fact, a very important learning process for you to actually go and inculcate the culture within the people. And personally, I think it's actually very important for us to actually go and groom our next generation clinician leaders to actually go and start doing some of this work. Having said that, you need them to land somewhere. And that, to me, within NHG, we actually also take a bit of an investment mentality to this, to make sure that, quite a lot of these things, after they have actually, in fact, went through the whole process of, getting buy-in, understand their process engineering, getting up the data model out, understanding how the human behavior is actually going to adapt it, and so on and so forth. They can actually go and bring it in safely and ethically. So over the years, while we have actually, in fact, doing a lot of these as a research project and trying to actually go and try to push it up, in parallel, we have actually, in fact, also put in massive investment to actually go and make sure we actually, in fact, have a platform when they are ready to actually go into an enterprise environment for them to actually go and really be widespread. So one example is that this year we are actually, in fact, pushing for our AI imaging platform. For us, I mentioned the chest X-ray model previously. It was actually housed in one of the box. So we actually want to actually go and do an enterprise platform. So when we actually, whatever models we have for image analytic, be it on chest X-ray, be it on mammogram, or even some of the ultrasound or CT scan, we have a platform integrated, with all the various systems that we have. So when it actually go and comes in, it's actually immediately able to actually go and deliver value. So I think these two have to run in parallel, and you cannot negate the investment in either one, because, or else, on one hand, you have a foundation with ideas. On the other hand, you have a lot of ideas, but without a good platform for them to actually go and come in. Neither of these will actually go and give you the end state you want. Yeah, so that's my sharing.
I'm happy to just share a couple of things that, I don't have the answer, but I can share what I've seen has worked. For success, people have managed to do this in the chance that they get. So number one, I feel that every single one wants to build. The first thing that they think about is, I want to build. I want to build the next application that is Gen AI enabled. And the second thing they think about is, I want to build for the most complex scenario, right? So I've been involved in like hundreds of scenarios in the last 2 years, AI and Gen AI. The number one thing that I always do when I come out of that meeting is scope it down, right? Totally scope it down to like about 20% about what you want to actually do, right? That will give you success. And then you make that measurement. A lot of them focus on the lagging indicators of success, which then when you report up to the board or to your stakeholders, it becomes very hard to justify, Because by the time we get to implementation and all that, so many things can fail. Everybody blames the technology, everyone blames the investment, everyone blames the people. So think about leading indicators of success, right? Even think about adoption metrics. Think about, hey, how many people are even using this that they didn't even use this before, right? The other thing that we encourage is, there's a lot of partners who've actually done the hard work. And if you're going to invest all this time to build a solution, that's great, that's your IP, but no one uses it, it's sunk cost. If you think about a SaaSified kind of model, you can turn it off. You don't lose that much, right? Let's just pick a license, like even Copilot, as Simon mentioned, right? Pick a few licenses, try it. Look at the users, look at their user behavior. And now Microsoft is now looking, I speak for Microsoft, but I'm sure other hyperscalers and other partners as well offer that diagnostic data to you. So you know usage data, you know what people are using, what people are not using, when they are using it, when they are not using it, right? Then you can devise a better, more comprehensive plan for the entire rollout. And the last thing I would say is, and this has worked like beautifully, and I've only seen it happen in 2 companies globally. Again, my limited scope means that I only look at a few companies, so it's not a data point that but I've seen it happen in 2 companies. You put the responsibility of the P&L and the cost of the implementation of this technology on the business, not on the CDO office, not on the IT office, right? So when you choose a project, you look at technical feasibility, you look at business feasibility, and then you look at, in that feasibility matrix, you look at who is the champion in your company. So usually, I always advise customers, say, hey, this is the highest value, this is the easiest. But my number one question to them is like, okay, is this person actually convinced to implement AI in the business process? And usually, the person who's totally convinced, the value is not high, but it's okay, we start there, right? We start there, and then he takes on the responsibility. He brings budget, he or she takes the budget, and then he reports it, right? That has worked beautifully. Now, I'm not saying it works for all scenarios or all companies or all situations. It's very complex. I understand the P&L statements in reporting. But if there's a way to put skin in the game for the business leader to take ownership of the success of whatever AI project, then it is a higher chance of it succeeding. That's the point.
Add on. So I think to us, Synapse fully supports public healthcare, right? So for us, we have a limited group of people supporting a large cohort of people who also has working and collaboration with multiple parties. So to us, I think to look at all this initiative, I think generally there's 3 things. First one is problem. Be very clear about the problem. I'm not going to create an AI solution because I want a solution to do this. But we need to be clear what is the problem to solve, right? There are many ways to solve the problem, and AI can be deployed in multiple ways to help in that. And it may not be one solution that can solve the whole problem, right? So I think we need to be very clear problem. Then, like what Cumarran says, scope it down, then we can start something. Which leads to the second one, which is fail fast, right? I actually assume all will fail, right? It's actually for the team to surprise me at the end, right? Because we want to go through it very fast so that we know what we don't know very fast and what we can do very fast, and if it makes sense, do something about it, and we have some sign of life, we then push forward. And we do this by doing the build, borrow, buy. What we can buy, we buy. What we can borrow, then we tap on our friends, say, lend me for a while, right? And if no choice, then we build. But we want to go through it fast and then be surprised later. And then the final thing is this magic number called 3, right? 3 iteration cannot make it. We will just carry on, right? Life goes on, we'll work on something else. What we learn actually is still something worthwhile, even though it may not be successful, but we just move on. Maybe the technology is not ready, maybe the environment is not ready, there could be many things that's not ready, but we just move forward. So I think that's the part that, usually how we want to push forward for things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just to add that we see exactly the same thing, and what it is, and we encourage our clients to do is invest some money and experiment. Just go out and learn. when I spoke about those processes, there are certain bits of data you will only be able to get through doing those sort of experiments and learning and that process. And you have to think about your investment being the value of those answers. You know, it's not something that's going to go out immediately generate revenue for you. It's going to be an efficiency gain, or you've learned something that people don't have, you couldn't have got. And I'll give you an example on that. One of the things that we've said is depending on the type of analysis you have, we have many different tools, AI tools, LLMs, and different models now, is go and try, like pick up a lot of them, software as a service, go and buy a subscription, set up a, you know, your Azure interconnect, do your OpenAI integration, go and get Claude, you know, and then do the same prompt or the same query injection to all three or all four that you do, and then count the number of tokens. Because a lot of people don't realize that each engine will look at it differently. And what does that mean when we talk about tokens? Tokens is the cost, you know, and we've seen this, and you will end up optimizing your solution that you finally do based on the most efficient platform for that query. And then you get a cost per query. And you realize that if I send it to model A, and that suddenly cost me $1.57 for that query and that analysis. But model B, for some reason, that was $10, right? Because they handle it in different ways. That is not publicly accessible information, and your use case is unique. You will only learn that through experimenting, and again, coming back to having a process to make sure you do that. And that's where we've seen really great success with that. You know, go out, learn, play, practice, but take those learnings and build on them.
All right, thanks. I think we got a lot of nuggets in terms of how we should be experimenting and through that process to figure out really what to invest in. Yeah. I want to remind the audience that you can feel free to send in your questions. In a while, I'll also probably just open up to the floor to see whether anyone wants to ask the questions directly to our panelists. Maybe let me just sort of present one more question to the panel, right? So I think, as Simon was saying, things are changing really fast in the AI space, especially with the Gen AI space. So I thought maybe you could share a little bit about, with all these changes, how has the thinking on leveraging AI changed and why? And what are some of the implications, especially for talent development? Yeah. Cumarran, you want to start?
Sorry, the question is around
how has the thinking on leveraging AI changed and why?
Given Gen AI is now in play.
Yes.
And also how we're going to talent.
And with all the very rapid developments. Yeah.
This is a good question, because, you know, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So if you and most of the time, the worry that I have is everyone just gravitates towards Gen AI. And if you look at a business process, since just connecting the dots to the earlier conversation, transforming a business process with AI is a series of steps. It's discrete. It's actually discrete. It's a discrete process. So you can actually go on a whiteboard and map out what the entire business process looks like. And for each of these discrete processes, discrete steps that an employee takes or a customer takes in his journey, there are specific pain points and interventions that you want to solve. And if you look at it, if you actually take the time to look at it, Gen AI only solves maybe the first part and the last part. Right in the middle, the 50% of all the challenges, like for example, forecasting, anomaly detection, churn prediction, and all of that stuff, it's actually normal AI, like what we call classical machine learning, which is my background, right? Your data scientists and all that who do these models with the data that you have, and then you move forward. So I think 2023, I felt this was a big, huge problem. I feel this is coming down a little bit. I think people are slowly realizing this because they didn't really know what it can, and more importantly, what Gen AI cannot do. But there's even more confusion in the market because you're talking a lot of multimodal aspects, like especially when people like OpenAI start coming out with true multimodal capabilities with GPT-4o, right? And then you realize that, hey, then this whole other aspect can be opened up, and then I can slap on GPT-4o and it solves everything. So it's like a pendulum, right? Like it always swings. You can never prevent this. It's something that is human nature. It's sexy, it's shiny, you want to kind of use it, it's great. I would just kind of caution everyone to get into the fine print, to not just look at what it can do, but also what it cannot do, so that you know your boundary conditions as a leader, and you know where to guide your teams to say, hey, why don't you consider this for this particular aspect, but let's not lose focus on where our people can add value, which is where the talent point comes in. Like AI is it's an agent, right? It's a co-pilot, right? Look, I'm not going to say never, but in today's context, there are a lot of things that we need to do, and AI will help you, right? And I go back to classical machine learning, I go back to the aspect of data scientists, right? There's a lot of models that you still need to build. Now, you have, AutoML, for example. You have a lot of tools that help you think through the easiest way to get to the answer, but you still have to do it, right? And then you also have the upstream part of it, which is data engineering. Now, Microsoft has a product known as Master Fabric. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's completely SaaSified. It helps, I have a data background in terms of data engineering, and we used to spin up a lot of Spark clusters, maintain those clusters, figure out how I'm going to do my ETL jobs just so my data scientist is happy, right? Because my worst nightmare is getting into a meeting and the data scientist is complaining that the data is rubbish, right? So I actually feel happy for the DEs meaning data engineers in the market today, right? Because the Copilot will completely change the way you do work. Right? You basically tell the agent what pipeline you want to build. In a few clicks, you integrate data from multiple sources into a platform which you then can build from. So I think if we take ourselves out of what Gen AI, solving for Gen AI, and you say, hey, because of this, there's so many other things that I can free up my time for, that would be my hope, and where people will eventually gravitate. The pendulum will come down, I feel.
So first I want to say I'm very happy about Gen AI. For people working on AI, previously something very passive, right? But at a very personal level, it kind of remind me about the time where I started on computing XT, AT, XT, 386, 486. I think most people don't understand what I'm saying. Then it was the mobile phones. Then was the iPhone 2, iPhone 3. There's a lot of excitement because every new iteration came with a totally different revelation, right? Even Windows previously, XP, etc. Now Windows always the same, right? But I think with the new one, Copilot plus Windows, I think the world is changing and there's a lot more excitement, right? And I think this is a good thing, right? And we are in a situation where there's kind of a reset, right? If you don't recognize it, because if we talk about machine learning and what we call classic AI, good old traditional AI, I mean we have the Googles, we have the Microsoft, we have a lot of people that say I've been doing it for many years, I know how it's done. Consulting companies will come and tell you I've been doing this for the customers, I know. But Gen AI, nobody knows. We are starting from same ground with different aspect of the understanding of the domain, but everybody can contribute to this new domain, right? The most scary thing is to ignore that you need to invest time to understand this domain, right? Because just like IT, right? I mean, most people when they have their education, they learn about mathematics, science, bio, etc. IT was a specialized track that you have to go and take, but now everybody takes IT as part of the course. But previously also, and for most people that's working now, nobody took AI, right? And a lot of people who are now very senior, they learn about AI, they get bits and pieces, they form their opinion based on what they understand, maybe a bit about technology, maybe about math, maybe about everything. I think it's very dangerous. I think we may be making the wrong decisions at the top. So actually it's important to learn together as an organization to move forward, right? And AI can no longer be something that the top management say, let's use this and everybody just do it, right? I think everybody on the ground needs to understand how to harness it. Like building a pipeline, if I give crap prompts, it'll come out with a crap pipeline. You actually spend more time, right? So I think these are the time where it's very exciting, and the learning at every individual level and at the organization level needs to start. And I think needs to partner with collaborators like Microsoft, Google, or everybody who's moving forward and chart out this new journey together. The worst thing is to just either wait for it or hope that it will go away. Then the story about the robots taking over will come true for you. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the questions coming in, many questions. I must ask this question, all right, because this is related to our discussion. It asks, are many CIOs, CDO, or CEOs looking at AI more due to FOMO factors, fear of missing out, FOMO, than any strategic reasons?
Yes. They are, but you have to admit that that is going to be expected, because it's not necessarily FOMO. It's fear of falling behind, and even if you don't understand it, the vast majority of the C-suite know that this is a big thing that we need to pay attention to. So I would say yes, undoubtedly there are people chasing, but that is not a bad thing, because it's the risk of falling behind if you don't adapt and adopt. And where we're seeing businesses really propel forward are those early adopters right now. And we have very quick, very big wins that we are seeing from industries that have gone and taken the plunge. So they're seeing that. And yes, that will create the fear of missing out, but in the right way.
Maybe welcome anyone who also want to contribute, and then I will open up for questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think not fear of missing out, right? But it's a really I think we are at a stage where we are running out of people, right? Singapore is very small, so I'm very myopic. I think about Singapore only because we are for Singapore public healthcare, right? So we cannot hire everybody to public healthcare to take care of ourselves. Doesn't make sense, right? We still need people in finance, still need people in Microsoft, etc., etc. But the only way is to augment the people that we have, because they are highly skilled, right? From Synapxe's perspective, there's no other way to explore, not the fear of missing out, but there's no other way to explore other than this, on top of optimizing our costs for technology to support healthcare and to make healthcare services more easily accessible for population. So it's something that we kind of like I shared before, about 7-8 years ago, we started to double down, right? I mean, I was hired 7 years ago to do this. So it's not because of fear of missing out, but I think it's one of the only ways that we need to figure out how to use that to help our clinicians, our healthcare workers do more with less, and to tap on their expertise in a better way. So I think that's the perspective. I think for most people, when ML, AI came out, it was like kind of F1 in my mind. It's like something that the rich companies will have, right? Or an excuse to do it because your board members say you all need to innovate, right? So, but I think it's becoming very serious now, because it's really at the individual level. You don't need to be a very big and rich company to invest in that, right? But I think it makes sense now to invest in your people, because just like any experimentation, even if the first use case fails, second use case fails, the individual retain that knowledge, and that's getting the organization more ready for new things to come, right? Like I said, this now is like the Windows XP. We haven't moved to a multi-model, very complex agent kind of environment, which is going to be even more complex for people to understand. But we don't start now, I think we are definitely going to lose out to the machines. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll open up to the floor for any questions. Yes, Kim Wai.
Good morning, everyone. All the speakers, I've learned a lot from you. I'm not a data scientist. I just look at it from the process, business perspective. I think Cumarran mentioned that your clients always want to have the complex system, perfect model and so on, want to do it 100%. And then your advice is to scale down to at least 20%. So the process of scaling down from that 100% to 20%, what kind of challenges you face, and making sure that the initial project, or 20%, 10, 20%, is scalable, especially now the technology is moving so fast. And a related question, I think I like the idea of having two-tier process, you know, your imaging platform and then all the ideas. I think these two questions are related. Whether your imaging platform has to be tweaked or iterated as you move on with all the individual 100 projects. So that's my questions. I think these are related questions.
Many challenges. I think, I assume you're asking less on the people challenge, like how do we convince our clients to move?
Whatever challenge you face, you meet your clients, the client put on the board the complete system that they hope to have, but then you come in and say, no, this is not going to work, because you have to start small, and you're going to scale down to 20%. From that 100% to 20%, how would you advise the clients?
Okay, sure.
Making sure that further down the road, whatever you invest for the next 12 months is still usable. Okay.
Totally. So most of the time, when we engage in these discussions, that 100% is actually an end state solution. It's never, as Andy mentioned, what the problem is. Okay. So step one is there's will be a lot of pushback to say everything, but we go back to first principles. We say, okay, can you just explain to me what the user journey is? Take for example, imaging or any user. Let's say you're underwriter in an insurance company or a doctor in a hospital, right? And then you map that out, and then you say, okay, if you were to solve just access to information rather than reasoning over the information and getting insights faster, right? Would that not, if I were to do this in say 2 weeks or 3 weeks, would that not be success? Then the person says yes, and then you move on and on and on. So as an example. Now, that's one way to kind of shift mindsets, and that's like the people side of things, right? And usually, I would say 99% of the time, people are okay with it, right? But I think your question is also even more fundamental, is that, okay, since I build these processes, do I then build 10 different POCs? That means if I have a business process, right? Let's say there are 10 steps. I'm just making this up, right? And then you say, I'm just going to solve for 2 steps. And then you do 1. And then you solve for another 2 steps. And then you do 1. That's not a sustainable path to success, because what you want to do is you want to build this. You want to make sure that the architecture is such that you can build on this to do the next. Now, how do you do that? It's your question, I assume, right? I'm not saying this only because I'm a cloud provider, but the answer is actually through cloud, right? Why? Because it's serverless, right? It's like your energy meter, right? And you'll be surprised how many people don't fully understand the value that cloud brings. There is a huge segment of our IT professionals who still think, I need a project, I need to buy a server. I need to build hardware. I need to buy a lot of these things, put it in there, and then upgrade them over time. No, that's not the answer. All you need is a credit card. You get a credit card, you spin up the resources, as Simon was saying, and everything is there at API based. Everything is there for you. It's all API based. Yes, you need to stitch together the right architecture, but it's very basic. The architecture is very basic. Then you get into complexities about, hey, where the data resides. Hey, what are your I say AD protocols because I have a Microsoft Azure head, but authentication, right? How do you make sure the data is protected? How do you make sure that you get the right data in there? Again, it's not rocket science, and it's not sunk cost for you to figure this out, because a lot of these services are now API based. It's very different in the past, right? In the past, you need very specialized skill sets to sit and actually build those code pipelines, do those transformations so in a very complex way to eventually feed into your model. Today, with a sample data set that you have cleaned up, you can easily access a ton of models, even Gen AI. Even Gen AI. A lot of them are API based, and some of them are also model as a service, what we call model as a service, where they become a managed service for you. You don't have to do anything. So back to your original question, making sure that it is something that you continually build on. You don't have to use money to build the hardware and the infrastructure. You just rent it, and then you swap in and out as you scale. A lot of these things are serverless. You don't have to go and provision resources. So, in one word, I would say cloud. There are many other aspects, but I think 60% of your problems will be solved if you want to scale this out, if you think about that kind of architecture.
Actually, Cumarran answered most of the question already. I'm just going to actually go and add probably around 1 or 2 points. Like it or not, I don't know how many in the audience here is actually cloud native. But in healthcare, like it or not, we are still a hybrid. You know, you still have a architecture that is actually housed in some data centers that you actually go and own, and you actually in fact have some service on the cloud. So just now I was actually in fact talking about the 2 tiers. Ultimately, it's actually some sort of one term now, which is actually what is actually the ghost state architecture that you're actually in fact looking at, that is actually in fact scalable, and yet mimic your production environment, so you can actually go and have a very, very short runway of actually in fact trying to actually go and bring them up where the value is. A lot of times, I think, when we do models, traditionally, you know, you have a bunch of data scientists, you know, get a bunch of data, de-identify them, actually run models and things like that. After you actually done that, I want to actually go and put into productions. It's actually, in fact, the interfaces, you know, the API calls, you know, the architecture that actually go and end up killing you and killing the project and killing the enthusiasm. And so therefore, I mean, when we actually go and design this, for example, like the image we were talking about, we ask ourselves, if I have an X-ray, what is actually, in fact, the minimum viable architecture I need in order to deliver that? And then the next question we actually, in fact, ask ourselves is, what if I actually going to have 50? What if I going to have 100? What is actually, in fact, how do I actually go and scale this structure? And most importantly, the current minimum viable architecture, is it scalable? And I think these are actually, in fact, very, very important questions that you need to actually go and ask probably in the first 5 questions that you ask yourself. Because without sorting it, you realize that you actually go and be chasing your own tails by redesigning your architecture, you know, in an iterative loop, and that's actually not going to be productive. Yeah, so that is actually just what I want to actually go and add.
That's an excellent point. I think, yeah, look, I don't want to belabor that one, but that was an excellent point that I missed out as well. Like the whole DevOps cycle, right? There's a huge LLM ops cycle that you need to also think about, and data ops, right? So not just your software development phase with the CI/CD protocols, you also need to make sure that your data is refreshed, right? And how are you making sure your data pipelines don't break? Because if you're moving it into production, it's a whole different ballgame, right? And you want to make sure that you are not, and when you say scale, you mean production, right? I mean, two sides of the same coin. And that process is integral, which is why a lot of tools are out there for you to actually use that from the beginning. Don't just do a POC on your laptop and then say, okay, now I'm going to think about scale, and we're going to bring in those LLM ops tools, your RAI to responsible AI tools and DevOps tools. Yeah.
Our imaging platform, right? The imaging platform. Yeah. So I think I just want to clarify. So we're helping them build a platform, right? It sounds like a very big deal, like, oh, you know, but actually it's a DevOps environment, right, with the minimum viable components, right? And ideally with partners and architectures that, based on your current patterns that you have defined for different kind of use cases in ops or future use cases, you can quickly turn them on so that you can scale. So while it sounds nice, it's actually very simple, very not sexy one, right? I think, but that is important, you see, because by not over-investing, then you can scale faster because you are ready to give up things or incorporate new things. I think, and main thing is to make sure that the architecture is open, so you can accommodate as many of the products or integrations or source system as possible. Yeah, I think that's what we are taking approach to most of the work that we are doing now for AI, for all this. We are trying to create a platform. Sounds very nice, but actually inside is very, very simple, right? We utilize a lot of the cloud, you know, concepts. We don't have to design the system to be fully optimized or fully, like, very good, clean architecture, because we don't need the system to run 10 years before a type refresh, right? We can throw it away next year. So we keep it light, we keep it different parts, but very interoperable, so that we can actually continue add on or drop if it doesn't work. But then we drop parts of it, not the whole thing. Yeah.
So what you say is interesting. However, for small organizations, this kind of even very simple DevOps environment might not be feasible for them, right? So how would you advise small organizations who might want to actually leverage on all these developments in AI and Gen AI? Because I guess what they would be seeing is lots of vendors. Every vendor is now talking about, I have AI now integrated into my suite of products, but every product that they would have to buy, they would have to pay. So what would be your advice to these kind of smaller firms in how to leverage the technology?
Icing that everybody wants to put on their cake, regardless of whether that was a tasty cake to begin with. So we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. The advice that we've given to smaller organizations actually is linked to a framework that we've begun to release with good results, the same as the larger organization, and I'm very happy to share it with this room. We keep it quite simple. Draw a line down the middle of a paper, and on the left side of that line, you've got to write down all of your internal applications and systems. On the right, you face everything that's external, your customer website, any services that you offer accessible to the public domain, anything that you might be as a professor, everything that's customer facing. If you then draw a line horizontally through that, and you think about that top to bottom list being security, high, low. What is a low security, like a low data security, low data risk internal system? That bottom left box, in there you will find things like holiday processing, leave requests. You'll find things like checking in about your benefits for what is on your healthcare. You will find things like, accessing internal information, finding out about corporate events. All those things will end up starting to be in those bottom left box. They are the lowest risk applications you can AI enable right now. Because they're internal, so only your staff are going to complain. It's not going to be detrimental to your external image. If data leaks, it's largely stuff that you've got to be not too worried about. And you will learn so much. So if you target your POC to be in those groups, that investment in learning, educating, upskilling, finding out what works for you, getting the infrastructure connections right, through that you can then scale. And you can start to then look at maybe going either to the right, what is the low external data to bring in better customers, or going up to saying, right, okay, we'll stay on the internal side of the fence and start moving up the track. So again, radiology, imaging is internal data, looking at that. It is not the full patient record. It's on that sort of mid-tier. It is a scan. You could particularly anonymize it pretty easily by using a coded reference, doing something like that. So again, it fits in that kind of domain for good places to start, to build, to learn, to development. And those exist in corporate environments as well. And we've seen really good results of that. We've seen it where suddenly HR are turning around and saying, you know what, we get half the emails now, just asking us about stuff, and this has been really good internal, and it's freed up a lot of our time to start doing other stuff. So then that helps to build your justifications and your return on investment models for scaling that further. You say, well, by doing this for them, we got this much back, they've gained this much time, it cost us this.
So on the concept of platform is exactly why we wanted to do something that we can keep and control so that we can use different products, right? I think like using radiology as an example, every vendor that comes to us will say, you must buy my end-to-end solution, right? And it costs millions of dollars just for one model, right? Imagine how many different kinds of x-rays that we take. Are we going to spend millions of dollars for all the different models and have so many different systems, right? It doesn't make sense. So therefore, we come up with one platform that has all the integrations based on our study of what we need for our healthcare system, and we manage that, right? And we tell the vendors, I'm not going to buy everything, I'm just going to buy this part, but I can integrate with you. And using open standard, we can host it here, right? So that I can work with multiple vendors, right, and not be locked in. Of course, to run the platform, there will be some cost, but we are trying to, cost containment is a very big topic here. We try to design a system where if there's no customer, how much will the platform cost to run? Ideally zero, never possible, but as close as possible. Then we scale up as the use cases come. And you may need partners or collaborators to build that together with you, but you need to be clear how it it will be important for your business. It's the no regrets components that will work in your system that you should invest on. So that should be something that is called platform. I know there are a lot of sexy things like platforms like with bells and whistles, right? I mean, you can, right? I mean, even healthcare, we don't buy a lot of that. I mean, some, we buy some. We don't buy a lot. So I don't think everybody should be buying all of those things, right? Maybe go with one, but make sure they are open that can be used for others. Yep.
Last question, please.
I have a question. As an AI leader, before you start your business, it does start an AI project. There must be business justification. Among the rest of the panel, who will you put as your team of people coming together, working along with you before you start an AI project?
I'll start. Actually, I don't need to pull them. No, okay. So maybe I go deep a bit. First of all, technology is moving faster than we can adopt. I mean, at least that's from my lens how I've actually been seeing it. And more importantly, technology have been more adaptable than traditional AI shop or IT departments can adopt. When you actually go and think from these two factors, literally, on a regular basis, I still practice in ED. So when I actually go back, I had a lot of junior doctors coming to me. Hey, Prof. Eric, I have this, interesting idea. Can we try it out and things like that? I think the coverage in the news over the past years of all these AI have actually been a treasure trove for us. Because previously, we need to actually go and really pull people to actually go and come in. And we actually need to actually go and tell them, hey, by the way, this is actually probably a nice tool with these possibilities that you can actually go and do. But now, at least in the younger generations, I get a very strong sense that they're actually very eager and they are very, very interested to actually go and try out. So I was actually, in fact, just going to supplement on the earlier questions. You asked me, the question was actually how small groups, not just small business, but small group of people with limited resources can actually go and, start these things. Actually, it's actually very straightforward. Within NHG, I just tell my nurses, our doctors, our pharmacists, and even our operators, well, know the do's and don'ts, and just go and play, because there's no such thing as I need to actually go and set up a server for you, I need to set up architecture for you, and I need to actually go open certain firewalls for you before you can actually go and do these things. Nowadays, all these things are actually on the internet, and as long as you know, for example, in our healthcare, you don't actually go and start putting patients' information there. Actually, it's actually, in fact, quite a safe environment for them to actually go and try out some of the new ideas. And it actually becomes a virtuous cycle. The more you let them try, the more they learn about the tools, the more they actually go and explore. And in turn, they actually go and become their business sponsor to actually go and help you. And we actually go and, in fact, see that, our people, or we have actually, in fact, our committee of AI practitioners as a committee of practice. We have actually, in fact, seen that group within NHG grow from just 20 people to now around 500 people now. And they actually consist of all the way from our senior management, all the way to our junior staff. And all of them have excellent ideas that they actually, in fact, working together with us to actually go and do it. So to me, it's not so much of whether you pull them over to actually go and help you, but how you actually go and develop an environment and to cultivate and culturalize this as part of your business. And therefore, people will actually go and, kind of like an autopilot, not co-pilot, autopilot to actually go and discover new things. And I can tell you, from my own experience, the idea that it comes to you is actually going to amaze you, and you will have problem catching up.
I just add very quickly, what we say is C-suite engagement is essential to getting anything AI. And ideally what your organization needs is a trusted advisor, and that can be somebody internally, it can be the CTO could take that role, somebody like that who's really passionate about it, it could be an external consultant. And then you need, before you even think about it, buy-in, that they will have access to the CEO, CTO, CISO, that C-suite, at CFO, to go through and check and validate everything. It has now become a standard question that I ask the clients who want to engage around AI work is, if I come and you want to do this, will I have access to those people? Will they make time for this? Is this a project you are really buying into? And if the answer comes back no, then I say, well, this project won't be successful for you and it won't be successful for me. So thank you, move on type thing. Without that level of engagement from the business, these programs are unlikely to succeed and you're unlikely to see value from them.
So from my perspective is, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of pilots in healthcare, right? We have so many technology projects running that we are supposed to have more pilots than the Air Force, right? So it's like hundreds and thousands. So I think one of the things we want to make sure is that we want to accelerate and bring them across, right? To land them. I think when you say who do you bring for projects, right? In my mind, it's a top-down, left-right approach, right? So depending on who it is, you may want to get a lower-level person on the ground to make sure that the idea actually makes sense on the ground, right? And iterate through what's the problem. I think a lot of time people are very excited about the solution. They think that it works and it doesn't. So I think with the bottom part, get the hypothesis validated, I think we come up with a business case, right? Then the left and right. The left is that get the technology providers, the ancillary teams that's working together to contribute as well. Because they may be looking at a very narrow problem and there could be impacts. You solve this problem, it could break other people also, right? So bring them in, especially the tech folks, right? Then after that, the right side, collaborators and partners like Microsoft, right? The build, borrow, and buy. If they already say, hey, I've got something, don't need to think really, quickly go and try it. They say offer it for free, just do it first, right? Then if it works, then if we have even more numbers or data to show, then come to the management, get the direction, show them all these things, right? I think usually the management will come with, can you do more? Why can't you do bigger? Can you do faster? Yeah, so I think in healthcare, the people at the top are very excited. Yeah, so the moment you touch on is like, can faster, more, cheaper, more people involved, right? So I think that portion in healthcare, I think we're not too worried. But it's to make sure it gets correct. Imagine the one that the person have a good idea, but it may not be really realistic. Then we just mention it to the management, wow, very good. Okay, let's do this fast and let's go, right? Then we may end up it hanging up there because we didn't close the loop with the rest. The journey will be longer. So usually that's how I look at it. Yeah.
One quick comment, then we'll wrap up.
A few things. One is you can do something small, right? And when we do POCs or we do pilots, it shouldn't be throwaway. I think that was the point the gentleman was trying to make. That when you do something, you start it with the right foundations, with the right tools, right, and all of that. Now, then the question is, hey, small businesses don't know how to start the right way, right? My advice is don't even start, because it's very hard, right? Go and look for vendors, get external help, spend the money, rather than trying to build that capability internally, because it's going to be very, very challenging. It's very easy to do POCs that are throwaway. It's very simple. In fact, you go to Azure today, there's a demo environment for you. Just one click, you can upload a PDF, you can actually do it. But if you really want to do something that's scalable, then I suggest if you're very small, you don't have the capability, I suggest you look outside first before trying to spend the next 12 months. I think also your question I wanted to touch, I don't know if you actually wanted to allude to that, is there's a talent problem, right? It's a talent problem. Today, I would say very few companies have the people in the business that can work with you to justify ROI. How do you actually get somebody? Who do you go to? Is it a business analyst? Is it somebody who's in the front lines? Is it a relationship manager who will actually own the process of saying, this is how much impact I'm going to make, this is how long it's going to take, and this is the technology cost, right? This is what we call, I think back when I was in McKinsey and Quantum Black, we call this profile a translator, right? He sits on both sides. And you have business skills to quantify, and you have some sort of technology. But this does not exist in many companies. So if your question is around the talent aspect, you have to hire them, because the business itself runs on the P&L. That means if you're selling insurance, they don't have anybody who's going to help you do ROI analysis. No, it has to come from your team. If you're in the IT team, right? Which means you have to hire those people who are actually going to sit with the RMs and ask them the right questions to build their business case, right? If you don't have that talent, you don't have time, get an external consultant, right? And I think that's your point, to go to a trusted advisor, get a consultant to actually do that analysis for you. Otherwise, you go into the process of what we just spoke about without the right business value justification. Easy to say, but harder to do. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. That's it.
It's the role of the CDO for small companies.
Yeah, but you got to hire the talent.
Right. Must get the training lah. You may not have it today, but must get on the training. Yeah.
All right, and with that, we've run out of time. I'm sure there are a lot more questions that you have in your mind. But feel free to approach our panelists during the break, and I'm sure they will hang around to talk to you further. All right. With that, I'd like to thank our panelists for taking the time to share their insights and to share their experience with us. A round of applause, please.
All right. Thank you, Professor Bo. Could I also invite all our panelists and Professor Bo to the front for a group photo? All right, thank you, everyone. Let's give them all another round of applause. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the first segment this morning. Before we continue the symposium, we'd like to invite you to head out to the event square for a morning break. The following session will commence at 11 a.m. sharp, where we'll welcome Ms. Lee Wan-Xie from IMDA to speak. Before you go, please remember to take your belongings and dispose of any litter. Thank you, and we'll see you after our morning break.